Welcome, dearly beloved anointed ones. Be careful who you count out. Some people were designed to rise in ways that defy explanation. Let that sink in. Because right now, as you're watching this, someone who swore they forgot about you is secretly checking your page. Someone who laughed when you were down is now wiping sweat from their forehead every time they hear your name. They said you were nothing special, but can't stop replaying moments with you like it's a Netflix series they never finished. Here's a fact most people ignore. According to psychological studies, people obsess most over the ones who made them confront their deepest insecurities, not the ones who gave them comfort. And chosen ones, that's exactly what you did. You didn't try to be unforgettable, you just were. You didn't need drama or attention to make noise. Your existence disturbed their entire spiritual ecosystem. Let's be real. You walked into rooms and unintentionally threatened the very foundation of people's fake confidence. No stage, no spotlight, just you, your presence, and your divine assignment walking in like, "Hi, I'm here to unknowingly trigger your entire ego and expose your unhealed wounds." This video will show you exactly why you're on so many minds right now, why your haters are sweating bullets in silence, and why, despite all the betrayal, misunderstanding, and exile, you remain a spiritual phenomenon that can't be replaced, erased, or ignored. Get ready, because after this you'll stop asking, "Why me?" and start declaring, "There really has never been anyone like me, period." Let's go deep. Number one, you trigger a type of guilt that can't be silenced with lies. You trigger a type of guilt that most people can't silence, even if they try to pretend they've moved on. It's the kind of guilt that doesn't leave them alone in the middle of the night. The kind that creeps in while they're scrolling, laughing, or even laying next to someone else. You didn't need to fight back. You didn't even need to defend yourself. The moment they mistreated you, their own spirit started judging them on your behalf. That's what makes you unforgettable. You didn't have to expose anyone. They exposed themselves through how they treated you. People rarely forget the ones who loved them purely, stood by them with no agenda, and still got hurt for it. That kind of innocence hits different. It haunts them in ways they can't explain because it forces them to face the ugliest parts of themselves. They didn't just betray a person. They betrayed someone they knew deep down was rare, maybe even divine. So now they walk around trying to rewrite the story, hoping if they call you crazy, toxic, or too much, they can feel better about what they did. But even when they say those things out loud, their conscience knows the truth. And that truth is loud when the world gets quiet. They remember your calm when they were chaotic. They remember your patience when they were disrespectful. They remember how you gave them grace when they gave you attitude. And now that they've had time to reflect, or face the emptiness of losing someone like you, they can't help but spiral. That guilt isn't going away because it wasn't based on a misunderstanding. It was based on clarity. They knew what they were doing when they hurt you. They knew you didn't deserve it. And now they're stuck with the truth of who they became in your presence. What's worse is that guilt mixed with your evolution is torture. You healed, you rose, you glowed up without turning bitter. And every time they see a glimpse of your joy, your peace, your wins, they're reminded of who they could have stood beside if they hadn't fumbled someone heaven sent. That's not just regret, that's spiritual torment, and it's all self-inflicted. Number two, you carry a frequency that can't be faked or replicated. You carry something most people can't explain, and that's exactly why they can't forget you. It's not your looks. It's not your style. It's not even your words. It's your frequency. The energy you carry when you walk into a room, the peace that follows you, the way your presence either calms people or completely disrupts their spirit. That's not something you can fake, and it's definitely not something you can copy. You were born with it. It's spiritual, it's divine, and it exposes every false version of strength people try to project. Most people are performing. They're wearing confidence like a costume. They're mimicking success, acting like they've got peace, pretending to be unbothered. But when someone like you steps in, genuine, whole, not trying to prove anything, you don't just stand out, you mess with their entire illusion. You force people to feel what they've been avoiding. And it frustrates them because they can't name what makes you different. They just know they feel smaller, messier, or more confused around you, even though you're not doing anything but being yourself. That's why people get obsessed. That's why they study you in silence. That's why they try to tear you down. Because deep down they know you didn't climb your way into power, you were born with it. They try to label it as arrogance or weirdness or even luck. But that still doesn't explain why you don't chase validation, why you attract people without trying, and why doors seem to open without you begging for them. That energy is not regular, and it makes regular people uncomfortable. What they don't realize is that the frequency you carry didn't come without a price. You earned it through pain, through betrayal, through moments where you had to heal in silence. It's not just a vibe, it's your testimony. And now that energy protects you, elevates you, and reveals everyone who's not aligned. That's why people fall off when you grow. That's why fake friends turn into enemies. They couldn't stay around because the truth in you exposes the lie in them. And now that you've stepped into your full light, they're obsessed, confused, and uncomfortable all at once. Not because you've changed, but because your frequency refuses to shrink for anyone. Number 3, you are the unspoken proof that they settled for less. You became the walking reminder that they settled, and that's a pain they can't escape. They didn't just let go of a person. They let go of a path, a future, and a version of themselves that could have been better if they had chosen to grow with you. They didn't pick you because you were too deep, too real, too raw. They picked comfort. They picked ego. They picked easy. But now they're sitting in the consequences of that decision, and the comparison is eating them alive. Every time they see your glow up, your peace, your purpose, it reminds them that they didn't level up with you. They stayed stuck. And now they're stuck with people who only mirror their dysfunction, not their growth. They watch you evolve from a distance, and that's the real heartbreak. Because you weren't just a missed opportunity, you were the exit route from their chaos. You were the upgrade they weren't ready for. And instead of admitting they weren't strong enough to walk that journey with you, they act like you weren't worth it. They convinced themselves you were replaceable, that someone easier or more familiar would make them feel better. But now, that replacement feels empty. The laughs don't hit the same. The connection doesn't feel sacred. The peace isn't there because deep down, they know what they lost. And it's not something they can buy, chase, or recreate. It was you, your energy, your wisdom, your love, your truth. Now they compare everything and everyone to you. They replay the moments they brushed you off, acted like you were too intense, too emotional, too much. But the truth is, they were too little for the kind of love you were offering. You weren't too much. They just weren't enough to handle you. And instead of growing, they ran. Now the guilt is marinating in regret, and the regret is turning into obsession. That's why they check for you. That's why they bring up your name in rooms they never wanted to mention you in. That's why they sweat every time you win. Because your life now exposes just how small they were thinking when they walked away. You were the higher path, and they chose low ground. That kind of truth doesn't fade. It follows them forever. Number 4, you're a soul they can't delete from their psyche. You're not just someone they knew. You became a permanent imprint on their soul. They thought they could block you, delete your number, unfollow you, erase your photos, or pretend you never existed. But energy doesn't work like that. Connection doesn't work like that. When you're a chosen one, you're not a temporary experience. You're a spiritual event. And whether they want to admit it or not, you left a mark on their mind, heart, and spirit that no distraction or rebound can wash away. They thought you were just a chapter they could close. But as time passed, they realized you weren't just a part of the story. You were the whole book. Every other connection feels dry in comparison. Every laugh feels forced. Every new person feels like a shallow attempt to replace something they know was sacred. You didn't just teach them love, you taught them depth. You didn't just listen, you heard them. You didn't just exist, you mirrored their potential. And now that you're no longer in their life, they're haunted by the emptiness your presence once filled. What makes it worse for them is how much they pretended you didn't matter. They put on a show, acted unbothered, acted like losing you was a win, but behind the scenes you never left. You show up in their dreams, in random conversations, in music, in moments of stillness when their guard is down. You became embedded into their subconscious in a way they didn't expect, and now they're trapped in a loop. they can't escape. Every time they see your progress, hear your name, or even come across someone who reminds them of you, they feel that pull, that spiritual memory, that energetic reminder that they mishandled someone divine. That's why they sweat when you succeed. It's not just jealousy, it's the realization that you're thriving without them, while they're still spiritually stuck in the memory of what they lost. You didn't disappear, you multiplied, you evolved. And now, no matter how far they run, they can't unfeel you, because you weren't just a person. You were the lesson, the mirror, the blessing they couldn't keep, and the story they'll never fully close. Number 5, you made God look too real in their presence. You didn't walk into their life trying to prove anything, but just by being you, everything they claimed to believe in was suddenly put to the test. You didn't preach, you didn't argue, you simply existed. And your existence carried a presence that couldn't be denied. You were living proof that God is real, that miracles happen, that divine protection is not just a fantasy, but a lifestyle. And for people who were used to treating faith like a costume, that was a problem. They said they believed in God until you showed up and demonstrated what that actually looks like. They talked about grace, but you lived it. They quoted scripture, but you moved with revelation. They said favor ain't fair, but when favor showed up in your life, they got bitter instead of inspired. Because the truth is, they never expected to see someone walk in alignment while still being relatable, humble, and real. You were proof that light and authenticity can live in the same vessel, and that rattled their entire image of power. You didn't need a pulpit or platform. Your life became the sermon. You survived things that should have destroyed you. You spoke truth in rooms where lies were currency. You carried wisdom beyond your years, and instead of crumbling under pressure, you transformed pain into purpose. They watched blessings follow you like shadows. They saw how things just worked out for you in ways logic couldn't explain. And that's when the resentment started to build, not because you were lucky, but because you were aligned. People who secretly don't believe in what they claim to follow will always be uncomfortable around someone whose life proves it. Your walk forced them to see the difference between performance and presence, between religion and relationship, between quoting God and knowing God. And that confrontation, it's not easy to digest. So now they avoid you, gossip about you, or even try to undermine you because deep down they know the truth. You didn't expose them with words, you exposed them with light. You made God too visible, too personal, too close for comfort. And unless they're willing to change, their only option is to resent the very thing they once claimed to be searching for. Number 6, they laughed when you had nothing. Now they're terrified you'll rise publicly. They were comfortable when you were struggling. When you had nothing, they felt powerful around you. They threw shade disguised as jokes, underestimated your potential, and treated you like a non-threat. Your low season made them feel secure in their fake success and inflated confidence. As long as you stayed beneath them, they could convince themselves they were ahead of you. They could laugh, mock, and secretly enjoy your lack because it made their mediocrity look like greatness. But now the story is shifting, and they feel it. The same people who used to laugh behind your back are now watching from fake pages, hoping your rise is just a phase, but it's not. You're building something they can't copy, control, or explain, and that's what's terrifying them. It's not just that you're elevating, it's how you're doing it. You're not begging for a seat. You're creating your own table. You're not bragging, you're just becoming, quietly, powerfully. And it's exposing everything they pretended to be. What makes it worse for them is that you're rising without spite. You're not dragging anyone, you're not seeking revenge, you're just glowing with a peace that can't be faked, and that peace screams louder than any clapback ever could. Now they're realizing the very one they mocked was the one with real substance, real favor, real purpose. And the deeper truth, they're terrified that your elevation will shine a light on just how fake their platform really is. They used to talk about you like you were irrelevant. Now your name shows up in places they don't expect, on the lips of people they tried to impress. Your growth has created a ripple effect, and they're scrambling to hide their past behavior before others catch on. They never expected the nobody they dismissed to become someone they can't avoid. It's not your success that scares them. It's the exposure that comes with it. The world is starting to see your value, your anointing, your strength. And as your influence grows, the truth about how they treated you will follow. They don't fear your glow-up, they fear the receipts. They fear the story being told in your silence. And most of all, they fear being seen for who they really were when you had nothing. And number 7, you were the only one in the room who wasn't performing. You were the only one in the room who didn't need to prove anything. You weren't trying to impress, outshine, or outtalk anyone. You just showed up as yourself. And that presence alone caused tension, because in a world full of people putting on acts, pretending to be more healed, more confident, more powerful than they really are, you stood out by simply being real. No mask, no script, no fake laugh. You didn't need to perform, and that exposed how many others did. People feel energy before words. They knew your confidence wasn't based on applause. It wasn't crafted through social media filters or loud declarations. It was coming from somewhere deeper. You didn't shrink yourself, but you didn't inflate yourself either. That calm, grounded energy disrupted every insecure person in the room, and because they couldn't figure out what made you so grounded without external validation, they started obsessing over you, not out of admiration, but confusion. You didn't seek approval, yet people were drawn to you. You didn't name drop, yet your name held weight. You weren't aggressive, yet your presence demanded respect. That's the kind of power that can't be mimicked. And it frustrated them because no matter how much noise they made, it never drowned out your quiet truth. That kind of authenticity is a mirror. When fake people are near it, they either reflect or react. Most reacted. You didn't need to dominate the conversation because your silence spoke clarity. You didn't chase attention because your aura attracted it. And the more effortless you were, the more they questioned themselves. How could someone with less need be so complete? How could someone so still shake the room? That's what bothered them most. You didn't ask for the spotlight, but the spotlight kept finding you. And now, long after you've left those spaces, they're still thinking about it, still comparing, still wondering how you carried so much power without the performance. You weren't just different, you were the standard. You showed them what real looks like, and because they were too busy acting, they missed the chance to truly connect with something, and someone genuine. That's a regret they quietly carry, even now. Number 8, your pain built an aura that makes you spiritually untouchable. Your glow didn't come from praise or comfort. It came from surviving what should have destroyed you. They see your strength now, and some even envy it. But what they don't understand is that it was built in silence, in the dark, in seasons where you had no one but God and your own grit. They look at you and admire the peace, the smile, the unbothered energy. But what really haunts them is knowing that everything you've become is the result of pain they either contributed to or cheered on. You didn't just survive betrayal. You transformed because of it. You didn't just endure rejection. You gained clarity through it. Every lie told on your name, every door slammed in your face, every tear you cried when no one was looking, it all went into the making of an aura they can't penetrate, and now you move differently. You walk with wisdom in your eyes and armor on your soul. That's not attitude, that's elevation. What makes them nervous now is how untouchable you've become. They used to be able to trigger you, shake you, pull you into their chaos, but now nothing they do gets a reaction. You've outgrown their games, their insults, their need for control. You became spiritually fireproof, and that frustrates people who only know how to function through manipulation and access. They thought breaking you would leave you bitter or broken, but instead it activated something ancient in you, something divine. Now, when you enter a room, there's a presence around you that speaks louder than any words. That's not just confidence, that's protection, that's anointing, that's sacred energy built through suffering and survival. And here's the truth, they can't touch you, not because you're hiding, but because you're covered. What they tried to use to destroy you only upgraded your spiritual rank. You're not above them because you think you're better. You're above them because you're no longer vibrating at the same frequency. You've been through hell, but you came out holy. You carry proof of endurance, and now every time they look at you, they're forced to face the fact that their worst didn't ruin you, it refined you. That's what makes them tremble. Number 9, you became the evidence that love was possible, but they weren't ready. You didn't show up trying to fix anyone, you just loved them with a kind of depth that's hard to find in this world. You didn't have to try to be special. Your presence, your intentions, your loyalty, and your heart already were. You didn't just say the right things, you meant them. You didn't love out of desperation, you loved from overflow, and that's what scared them, because they weren't used to real. They were used to people who needed them, not people who chose them from a place of wholeness. You weren't just love, you were proof that it still existed in a world full of fear, games, and shallow connections. And instead of rising to meet that kind of purity, they backed away. They mocked it, tested it, tried to manipulate it. They chose ego over growth, attention over intimacy, and comfort over vulnerability. And even though they knew you were rare, they convinced themselves you'd always be there. They thought they had time. They thought you'd keep waiting while they played with your heart like it was disposable. But now you're gone. And the silence is louder than they expected. They don't talk about it, but they think about it constantly. Every time they see a post about love, every time someone brings up your name, every time they try to connect with someone new, it hits them. You weren't just someone they dated. You were a mirror, a blessing, a glimpse of something they didn't believe they deserved. Now they replay the moments they ignored your honesty. The times you offered grace and they gave you attitude, the times you asked for depth and they gave you deflection, and it's haunting them, not because you're punishing them, but because the truth finally caught up to their denial. You were the prophecy they didn't believe until it was already fulfilled. And now they live with the ache of what if, knowing they'll never find another you. That kind of love doesn't come twice. It doesn't chase. It doesn't beg to be seen. It offers itself fully, and if rejected, it takes its light elsewhere. And that's exactly what happened. You didn't lose them. They lost something irreplaceable. And now they're left trying to recreate a connection that was never meant to be imitated, only honored. Number 10, you're the one their spirit recognized, even if their mind rejected you. There are some connections that don't need logic, explanation, or time to make sense, because the soul already knows. That's what happened with you. From the moment you crossed paths, something in their spirit recognized you. Before their ego kicked in, before their fears got loud, before their defenses took over, they felt you. Not just as a person, but as a divine presence, a mirror, a lesson, an assignment. But their mind couldn't handle what their spirit was trying to receive. They weren't ready for someone who saw through them, someone who loved them past their mask, someone who wasn't impressed by the image, but drawn to the essence. That kind of raw recognition is terrifying when you're not healed. So instead of embracing it, they ran from it, or worse, tried to destroy it. They may have ghosted you, pushed you away, or convinced themselves you weren't right for them, but deep down they knew different. That tug in their chest when they think of you, that's not nostalgia, that's spiritual accountability. They know they fumbled something holy. You weren't just a relationship or a friend or a moment. You were a chance to evolve, a divine opportunity to grow, to break generational patterns, to experience love in its purest form, and they rejected it. Now, no matter how far they go or how much time passes, that spiritual bond lingers. They dream about you, they feel your energy in quiet moments. They try to replace the connection, but it never lands the same, because it's not just about missing you, it's about feeling the weight of having failed something heaven sent. That echo stays with them, not to torment them, but to remind them of what was possible had they chosen truth over fear. You weren't perfect, but you were aligned. You didn't chase them, you met them, spirit to spirit, heart to heart. And while they might forget your words or your face in moments, what they'll never escape is the pull. That feeling they had when they were around you, that clarity, that peace, that mirror, that knowing. You weren't a random person. You were the divine assignment they failed. And now they live with the ache of something their spirit embraced, but their mind was too broken to accept. Number 11. You unlocked their deepest insecurities without saying a word. You didn't have to lift a finger to make them feel exposed. You didn't argue, flex, or try to outshine anyone. You just were. And that was enough. Enough to shake them. Enough to make them feel small. Enough to activate everything inside them they tried to hide from the world. Because when you walked in, you didn't just bring presence. You brought reflection. You showed up with healing, self-awareness, and quiet strength, and it instantly revealed their lack of it. They were used to being the smartest, the strongest, the most admired in the room. But then you showed up, authentic, grounded, and completely uninterested in proving anything. And that's what made you dangerous, because your energy didn't beg to be validated. It already was. You didn't need to be seen to feel worthy. You didn't need to win anyone over to feel important. And that kind of self-possession terrified people who were still building their identity off of attention, approval, and ego. You didn't trigger them because you were loud. You triggered them because you were clear. Clear on who you are. Clear on your value. Clear on your boundaries. And that clarity made their confusion uncomfortable. You reflected a version of themselves they claimed to want to become, but weren't disciplined enough to embody. So instead of being inspired, they felt threatened. You didn't compete, but they treated you like a rival. You didn't call them out, but they responded like you had, because deep down they knew your existence revealed everything they were still faking, and that realization hit hard. It's one thing to be around people who play the same game. It's another to stand next to someone who stopped playing completely. Your wholeness, your peace, your self-awareness. It all told the truth they were trying to avoid. So they got defensive, passive-aggressive, dismissive, not because you hurt them, but because you reminded them of the work they still hadn't done. And the more you elevated, the louder their insecurities got. That's why they couldn't be around you for long. It was never about you being too much. It was about them not being enough next to someone who wasn't pretending. You were never their enemy. You were their mirror. And mirrors don't lie. Number 12, you survived everything that was supposed to destroy you, and they're confused. They counted you out the moment life started breaking you. When the betrayal hit, they smirked. When people turned on you, they joined the crowd. When you were overlooked, mocked, and left to figure things out on your own, they watched silently. Some even clapped behind closed doors. They were certain you wouldn't recover, certain you'd spiral. They expected your pain to eat you alive, but you didn't fall apart. You transformed. And now they're confused, completely thrown off, because in their world, pain equals destruction. But in your world, pain became the raw material for elevation. They don't understand how you got stronger without revenge, how you found clarity through chaos, how you kept your heart intact when everything around you was trying to make you bitter. They only know power through domination, manipulation, or control. But you found your power in surrender, in handing it to God, in doing the inner work, in rising without making noise. That's why they can't make sense of your glow. It didn't come from the usual sources. You didn't use anyone. You didn't lie your way to peace. You didn't manipulate your healing. You earned it through spiritual warfare. You let people go and somehow became more whole. You walked away from places that drained you and somehow found favor. You lost everything at one point and somehow came back with more. That kind of bounce back doesn't make sense to people who rely on external power. They don't understand what it's like to fight battles in the spirit and win. They don't get how being broken led you to being unshakable. You became a walking contradiction to their expectations. The way you laugh now, the way you speak with authority, the way you move without seeking permission. It doesn't match the version of you they remember, the one they thought was too weak, too soft, too fragile to make it. And that's why they stare from a distance, still trying to figure it out. Number 13, you're the unfinished sentence in their story, and it haunts them. They thought you were finished, but all that time you were being refined. What was supposed to destroy you actually revealed who you really were. Now your life is the proof that survival isn't about control. It's about surrendering to something greater, walking through the fire and coming out covered in glory, and that breaks every rule in their limited view of strength. They were so sure they had the final say. They thought they could walk out of your life mid-sentence and close the book like it was just another story. They ghosted you without explanation, lied like it was casual, mocked you to feel powerful, and even celebrated your absence like it was a win. They convinced themselves that leaving you behind would erase your presence. But what they didn't expect was that the story would keep going without them. And not just going, but thriving. You became the plot twist they didn't see coming. Instead of falling apart, you elevated. Instead of chasing them, you chose yourself. Instead of shrinking in the silence, you built something in it. You took every unanswered question, every betrayal, every unfinished conversation and turned it into growth. Now you're walking in clarity, in peace, in purpose. And the life they thought they could end for you, you're living it better than ever. That's what haunts them. Not that you moved on, but that you became more in the process. You became the unfinished sentence that keeps replaying in their mind. They try to act unbothered, but they're still watching, still wondering, still waiting for a downfall that never came. And every new success of yours, every time your name comes up in a good way, every post, every glow, it reopens the story they thought they closed. You see, they never expected you to win without them. They wrote you off thinking they were the main character and you were just background noise. But now it's obvious. You were the substance. You were the moment. You were the one carrying something real, and without you, the story got dull, predictable, hollow. Because the truth is, they didn't just lose a person, they lost a divine connection, a catalyst, a once-in-a-lifetime chapter they now wish they could rewrite. But it's too late. You're not turning back to finish the story they abandoned. You've become a whole new book. And now, they live with the regret of a story they'll never get closure from, not because you're cruel, but because their actions wrote themselves out. And the haunting part? You were the sentence that could have changed the entire plot. Number 14. You're no longer accessible, and that's the real reason they're spiraling. They never imagined a day would come when you'd stop answering, when your energy would no longer be available on demand, when you'd no longer bend over backward to explain yourself, to prove your heart, to keep the connection alive. They thought you'd always be there, always accessible, always open to fixing what they kept breaking. But now, everything's shifted and it's making them spiral. You're not bitter, you're just done. Done being the emotional crutch, done being the easy target, done playing the role of the forgiver while they kept playing the villain. You've reached a level of healing that isn't loud, but it's permanent. They didn't believe you'd ever reach this place, and that's what's hitting them the hardest. The access they once abused is now denied. Not because you're punishing them, but because you've finally protected what's sacred, you. You don't post the same way. You don't reach out. You don't react. You don't chase closure. You don't explain your absence, and that mysterious peace you're walking in, it's suffocating them. Not knowing what you're doing, who you're with, or what you're planning, it's making them itch. Because control is how they maintained power. But now, they can't read you, can't reach you. And it's driving them insane. What's wild is they always had access, they just never honored it. They never realized your presence was a blessing, your vulnerability was a gift, and your love was sacred real estate. They thought you were replaceable because they confused your kindness with weakness. Now that door is shut, not slammed, just sealed, quietly, firmly, without announcement. And that silence, it's the loudest thing they've ever heard. They thought you'd wait forever. They thought you'd always respond, but now you're too busy becoming the person you were always meant to be. You've detached, not in anger, but in power, and they finally see it wasn't about what you wanted from them. It was about what they failed to value when it was right in front of them. You were never ordinary. You were access to the divine, to healing, to unconditional love. And they lost that, not by accident, but by choice. That's what has them spiraling. Not because you left, but because now they can't come back. They thought they could play with you, walk over you and circle back when it suited them. But you've evolved into someone they no longer have the password to. You didn't just walk away, you ascended. And that ascension wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, holy, and irreversible. Everything about your journey screams divine protection. Your growth didn't come from applause, it came from solitude. Your strength wasn't built in comfort, but in chaos. And that version of you they laughed at, disrespected, and tried to erase, that version is gone. In its place stands someone spiritually fortified, emotionally untouchable, and energetically unavailable to nonsense. Now they sit with the ghost of access they once took for granted. They scroll past your name, hoping for a crack in the door that will never reopen. What they fail to understand is that your love was a once-in-a-lifetime encounter. And now that it's gone, they realize it wasn't just love, it was legacy. So let them sweat, let them overthink, let them spiral trying to decode the peace you finally earned. Because when you were within reach, they saw you as an option. But now that you're inaccessible, they're forced to face a brutal truth. They lost the rarest soul they'll ever know. If this spoke to your spirit, don't just scroll away. Take a second to show love. Go ahead and like this video, drop a comment below with your thoughts or testimony, and share it with someone who needs to hear this truth. Your voice might be the reminder they've been waiting for. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another message tailored to your soul. This is more than a channel, it's a sanctuary for the chosen, and your presence here makes it powerful. Thank you for being part of this journey. Now go forward, bold, healed, and unapologetically divine. God bless you.